Hello again from LifeSci Consulting in London, and another one of our conversations with senior leaders in the industry. I'm very excited to be joined by Phillip Duncan today. Phillip, you may not know this, but you were actually my first ever client in the life sciences industry some 13 years ago, so it's somewhat of a sort of extra privilege to have you here with me today, so welcome.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. And well, it's a privilege for you supporting us because the work you did was superb.
Well, thank you, very kind. I guess for our audience and for our viewers today, it'd be great just to get a little bit of a sort of potted history about Phillip Duncan and how you've gotten to be here today.
So thank you. So I've been in procurement all my professional career, 30 years now, which is quite a frightening statistic. So I've started my first part of my career was in FMCG. So I was Senior Vice President for Procurement in H.J. Heinz. Prior to that, a company called Whitbread, which you may know. Yep. But the latter half I've been in pharma. So I've been CPO for two of the big pharma companies in my past, so Novartis, and following that Takeda. And currently I'm helping a very small UK-based pharma company transform their procurement function.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to be able to tap into all of that experience and have a bit of a conversation at the moment. Let's sort of start with some general sort of context around challenges facing life sciences companies today. What do you think are sort of 3 to 5 things that CFOs, CPOs like yourself are really thinking about?
Well, there are several, but actually there are some issues which are company-wide or industry-wide issues that also very much impact procurement. So, in no particular order, the cost of R&D. So, as we move more towards precision medicines and personalised medicines, which is fantastic for the patient, is creating a bigger and bigger cost for pharma companies for R&D. So R&D productivity has been and remains and is growing as a big challenge to the industry. Secondly, I think the whole issue on big data. So I mentioned personalised medicines. To deliver that requires huge amounts of data, big data, and that in turn poses various challenges such as security, how you interpret it as well, but most importantly the data privacy piece. And legislation is keeping pace with that as well, so that's a tough ask. And last, a generic one actually for all industries is the battle for talent. I mean, it's an overused expression, but it's so true. Ultimately, it comes down to people, skilled, motivated people.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that talent a little bit later and get your thoughts on how to make meaningful change and impact happen. Maybe before we go there, I'm guessing the phone call you get these days is from investors or CEOs who have a cost challenge or need to do something relatively major and structural with their organisation, and it'd be great to sort of get a few words from you on where do you start.
Yeah, well, that's very good. That's exactly the role I'm doing now. Actually, is I got that call. So where do you start? Actually, it's quite simple. You need to start to make a transformation happen, to drive cost out. It needs to come from the top. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter how sophisticated I can be or my teams can be if there isn't a culture of cost optimization in the company. Very easy to say, but actually quite hard to do, particularly in the pharma industry, because pharma has always been, as you know, reasonably profitable, should we say. So to get that cost focus. But the industry needs it now. So leadership and direction. Once you have that, then you as the CPO, you need to have a clear vision. So I've always tried to pride myself on having a simple but clear vision which is consistent. Even though I've not been particularly skilled at the detail, I employ really smart people to do that. As the leader, you have to have clarity of thought, you have to have clarity of communication. So that's clearly important. In no particular order, you need to understand your spend. Mm-hmm. You need to understand where the big buckets are. The temptation, of course, is to always sort of eat the elephant in one go, if that's the right expression. But you need to focus on the big bucket items. Again, an easy thing to say, but in practice, you kind of want to touch everything, but you can't always do that. And then surround yourself again with really good people.
You talk there about the big buckets, and I know it differs depending on whether you're a CRO or a biotech or a biopharma company in terms of what those big buckets might be. But in your career, where have always been the really lucrative places to go hunting?
Well, actually, I'll answer that in an indirect way, but I will answer that.
Yeah.
So it depends where you are in the transformation. So if it's a new transformation where procurement hasn't really been involved in the past, and there's not been a culture of cost optimization or cost consciousness, then everywhere is fair game. So simple price compression and demand savings, you can make big double digits everywhere. But once that's kind of done once or maybe twice, then you're into being far more focused. So you look at, so areas for me have been things like CROs, direct materials, bizarrely, or not so bizarrely, but consulting and professional services, particularly in the life science, is a very profitable or a very costly area, depending on your point of view.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Phillip.
You told me to speak plainly.
No, absolutely, and I think you've touched there on a topic that's really important to me and focuses on a lot of the work that we do, which is around demand. Yeah. How do you, in many ways, that's a behavioural, hearts and minds sort of topic, particularly when dealing with scientists or marketeers in the industry. What sort of tips have you got around how to really go after demand?
So it's kind of top down and bottom up. So this is where you need the clear direction from the senior leadership, because these are incredibly smart people, scientists, and they're focused on maybe a higher calling, if you will, to invent medicines. So there has to be some clear direction there that actually, guys, you also need to stretch the dollar as far as it can go. But then you come bottom up, if you like, with logic to explain that actually we don't. I know this is a very simplistic example, but you don't need 10 different test tubes. You can suffice with one or maybe two sizes. So a silly example, but to show you can through examples.
Yeah. The world's changed a lot in the time that we've been working together, and certainly the economic environment that we're operating in at the moment. What are the key things that have changed over the course of your career from a focus perspective when thinking about third parties, when thinking about cost?
So probably two gradual changes, but then more dramatic, which I'm still coming to grips with myself. That cliche or adage about you're never too old to learn is so true. But over the first 50 years of my career, it has been very much the rise of environmental concerns, of CSR. Again, 20 years ago, it was never spoken about. Maybe in general terms, in one or two specific industries like textiles, clothing, it was. But in the wider domain, now it's almost item number one on the agenda. And actually, the way we think about procurement, the way we think about suppliers, seeing the suppliers as an asset rather than just a cash cow. I mean, there's still a bit of the latter, but more and more, particularly as you get more sophisticated, you have to find new ways of delivering value and growth through working with a limited number of key suppliers. So that's been the other trend over my career. But since COVID, really, the world's turned on its head. I mean, we have pandemics and how that's affected supply chain, war in Europe, which we all thought we'd seen the last of, the cost of living crisis. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the first one, but that it's killing a lot of people, and that has effect on all industries. And so on and so forth. There's so much change, and that has significant impacts on supply chains, on security of supply, on the cost. Things like low-cost country sourcing, which we assumed was the mantra for so many years, is now coming back. So yes, I'm now very much into this expression right sourcing, and challenging the old certainties that we have to push everything either offshore or out of the company. That's not always the case now, in my opinion.
One of the big topics today, of course, too, you touched on the cost of living crisis and sort of general economic disruption, is inflation. Yeah. We get asked a lot, what should we be doing about inflation? What do you think people should be doing about battling inflation?
Well, clearly, I mean, there's the obvious things about understanding the costs anyway, because a lot of vendors, and why not, I would do the same, are taking an inflationary environment to recover lost margins and lost ground from prior years. And I'd do exactly the same in their shoes. So understanding the cost base is critical, and the should cost modelling, which we sort of took for granted, but I think sometimes it's gone out of fashion a bit. But probably more importantly is think about what we actually need to buy. Do we need to buy this anymore? Is there a different way of doing things? Can we automate it? Can we just do things differently?
Yeah, I think that's particularly where there's a lot of. I mean, one of the big drivers of inflation, of course, at the moment is labour cost, and so I think, as you say, thinking about the applications of technology, make versus buy decisions, in-source versus outsource are a key part of that, obviously.
Absolutely, and the cost of the right labour will continue to spiral, I think, and I think that's potentially positive if you're on the right side of that and you're the one being sought after. But it's back to our battle of labour, our hunt for labour, for good talent.
We touched on this earlier, but one of the hallmarks of your career, from my perspective, has been these big transformation programs that you've run. radically changing the performance, the capability, the output of procurement functions at very large global organizations, and now at smaller organizations as well. I really love your perspective on what are the key success factors in making those changes happen. What are the secrets, or maybe not so secrets, that you've uncovered that have always allowed you to deliver those sorts of results that I've been able to be part of over
well,
the years?
You're very calm. I actually think it's so simple, it's so straightforward. So I think I touched on this earlier. It's having clarity of the vision and what you're trying to do, particularly with a vast organisation where you have upwards of 100,000 employees you're serving, which I had in one company. So being consistent and clear, very simplistic message. Obviously having that top-down support I mentioned before, but then surrounding yourself with really smart, talented people, both internal and external, who can work through the various project plans, the change process you have to go through. Absolutely critical. I cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, yes, you need great systems, you need data, but I would trade all of those for a motivated, smart team any day. Obviously, the best thing is to have them both, clearly. But I think they're probably the most major ones. Big KPIs, accountabilities, the sort of stuff that we should take as granted, but nevertheless sometimes they're overlooked. So having clear targets, delivering them, holding yourselves to an account as well is very important.
Okay. I've got one almost final question. A lot of our clients are at the complete opposite end of the scale to where you were at Novartis or Takeda. Very small, have often been given some investment in order to work through the early stages of their clinical development. Many are thinking about how to go about engaging with third parties. Do they need a procurement function? Do they hire a CPO? What would be, if you've got a limited amount of resource and you're at that early stage of your development, what would be your advice to an investor or a CEO or a CFO around the importance of appropriately managing third-party expenditure at an early stage of a company's development?
Essential, because it sets the tone for how you go on. It sets the sort of suppliers or partners rather you want to employ. I mean, obviously companies' margins vary from company to company, but let's say 50% of your cost base is third parties. It's critical, it's business critical that you have that under control. And indeed, you also then exploit, in the right sense of the word, the capabilities that the vendors can bring. So the short answer is yes, I would hire a CPO or a head of procurement, whatever title you'd like to use. The same rules apply whether you're a 1,000 employee company or a 100,000 employee company. If it's a 1,000 employee company, the CPO will be far more hands-on, which I'm learning, but that's good fun too. Yeah. But the same rules apply.
You make a really good point there. Just to almost close that out, it's so much about the ecosystem that the organisations are putting together in order to get their medicine or their device to market, isn't it? It relies on so many different partners, not just internal capability, but innovation from externals or others who are supporting the value chain. And so not just identifying the right ones where there's so much change in the market, but also putting the right commercial deals in place is really, really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Philip. It's
my
been
pleasure.
Great catching up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another one of our conversations. It's been absolutely brilliant sitting here with Phillip Duncan, LifeSci Consulting London. That's all for today. Thank you very much.